Welcome back, everybody, to
What
Anna
Anna
said.
Said podcast. The last time that we were all hanging out here together, we talked about Kim's twin boys, and we also left off about Kim's older twin boys, her oldest, actually. So let's dive right back into where we left off. Kim, tell us more about your twin babies. I remember you saying that they do turn 9 this Christmas
Yes.
in heaven. So tell us about them.
Yes. So I remember the day finding out about that I was having twins, and it was just such a crazy experience because I never thought that I could have twins. So I was excited. My husband was excited. This was my first pregnancy. So it was scary and going into something new that I've never experienced before. But all in all, it was a joyful and exciting time for us for sure.
That was a joyful time. I remember when Sally and I found out that you were having twins. We were over the moon excited.
Over the moon excited, and I was ready to share your news
Oh.
with the world. I am that sibling.
I do remember that.
I could not share. I
Yes.
couldn't hold it in or contain any of that excitement. I am out of my sisters. I am the one that documents everything, and so this was something so exciting to me, and I couldn't wait to share. And I think I remember posting a picture
Yeah.
of your ultrasound.
Yes. You.
Sally was like,
Yes.
let me announce it for you, girl.
Yes. Sally was the
Private.
one that did announce it and posted the picture. She did ask me first, of course, and I told her, yeah, you can go ahead. So she posted it, and that's how everyone came to find out.
Ma'am, it was a private. So I posted it, but it was private
Oh.
to
Was
just
it?
mom and dad. Yes, I will put the proof up for anyone who's tuning in on YouTube. I'll put that proof up. I even made I said that it was just for mom and dad.
Yeah, so Sally was so excited about the news just as I was, and so she couldn't wait to tell everybody about your pregnancy and how you were having twins. It was a big thing for us because this was your first pregnancy. You had just gotten married earlier that year, and then now you were expecting, and then it was twins. So this was double the joy, double the excitement.
There was a lot that went on that year. And so, yes, that was something exciting to look forward to. I know at that time, mom and dad had, I think, prior to you finding out, they had left for Fiji.
Yes.
So, what a time. What a season.
That's right. So did you call mom and dad when they were in Fiji and let them know that you were?
Yes, I did. And I remember this day. I was sitting on my bed upstairs and I FaceTime mom and dad with my husband. And I said, oh, I have some great news. I'm pregnant. My mom already knew because she said before she left, I was having those pregnancy symptoms. I was being a little short tempered. So when I let my parents know, my mom already knew. But the more exciting part was instead of one, there was two. So I showed them the sonogram and they could not believe it. They were over the moon excited for us and praying over us while they were in Fiji because they went out there, I believe, for 6 months at this time.
Yes. So my parents, a little backstory on why they went to Fiji is because, well, my father, when he was in Bible college, he was in school in Fiji, and he had a hand in building the church there from the ground up, Narere Bethel Baptist Church. And at this time, the pastor had taken some time to go back home to Korea. And so they asked my father and my mom to come and fill in while he was away. So my parents that year decided that they would go back to the church and just look after everything while the head pastor was away. And so they went to Fiji. They left us here for 6 months. We were by ourselves. We're all grown and married at this
Yes.
time, but it's just
But
they left. And so when they did leave, Kim shortly found out that she was pregnant after
Yes.
that. And then
I wasn't married yet. But
Oh
I was a single independent woman. So
I'm sorry. Sally wasn't married. So I forgot Sally was not married at that time. This was in
This is the year that I
2014.
met- or this is going into the next year, into 2015, when I did meet my husband.
Right.
So
Right. So they left and then you found your husband, right? Because
Yes. Naughty girl.
you're going to find out, Sally, real quick who she is. No, so my parents went to Fiji to take care of the church there. And so we were here. myself and my husband, Kim had just gotten married that year.
Yes.
And so a lot of things were happening this year. It
Oh
was kind of
yes.
like we were on a fast track to.
And you were pregnant as well, correct? With Maria.
I
You were
was.
pregnant
I was
together.
pregnant with my third pregnancy. So we got to be pregnant together during
Yes.
this time.
Yes.
So you found out and you called mom and dad and let them know.
Yes, and I think um that this podcast is going to be pretty special because this is the first time I believe that me and my sisters are sitting here together and talking about the whole experience together and all the emotions. So,
Yeah,
um,
'cause I'm already shedding tears over here.
Yeah, because we never really we went through everything, but we
yes,
never discussed how everything
yes.
unfolded.
But I just wanted to give a little backstory. Before Christmas Day in 2014, I wanted to tell a story about Christmas Eve. So the night before, I remember I was 23 weeks and 4 days, I believe. I was almost 24 weeks. So I was almost 6 months. And I was so hungry, and me and my husband were going to watch a movie at home, have a little movie, and I wanted a snack. Okay. At this time, my husband and myself, we only had $20 to our name, only $20. And on Christmas Eve, there's no other stores open except I think CVS and Walgreens. So we headed to CVS down the street and we went inside, picked a couple snacks. And I remember right before we headed to the cashier, there was a stand, and the stand had boxes of robes, the same kind of robe, but just boxes stacked for you to see so you can grab it and check out with it. And I remember looking at this robe in this box and feeling it and telling my husband, man, I would really like this for Christmas. This robe was $20, and $20 was all we had, but we just got snacks with that $20 instead because I was 5 months at this time and wanted a snack. So we checked out, headed back home, and this was Christmas Eve. Now, that little backstory, you'll see why it's important and how it comes into play on Christmas Day.
Speaking of Christmas Day, I still remember that morning, Christmas morning on 2014, being pregnant and looking
Yes.
forward to
Oh, yes.
looking forward to going to eat after church because I knew that we were going to go celebrate with the rest of our family at the restaurant. So I remember getting ready for the day happily, knowing that I was gonna go and get as much food as I wanted after church. And
Oh,
so,
yes. That's the best feeling. Being
right.
pregnant and someone is going to feed you. So, and it's good food. Yes. That is a celebration in itself.
I wish I could say I remembered what how that day went, but that memory is a little foggy. I just remember coming together at the restaurant with everyone. I know it was Auntie Anna that invited everybody to come eat, and so I know there's a picture somewhere of all of us together, and what a special time it was. Taking pictures of you with Anna's girls. I believe there was only Billy C and May, and those pictures are so special looking back. Aren't you guys grateful that I'm the
You know what? And that's
person
one
who
thing that I do
documents?
appreciate you for, Sally, is
Yes.
because you document everything.
Every single thing.
And back then, it was like you always had a camera in somebody's face. But now I'm just so grateful
now,
for having those
yes.
memories.
Oh,
And
yes.
we didn't know where that day was going when we
Right.
woke
Mhm.
up, but those pictures are so special, and I'm so happy to have those pictures from that day today. Like we said earlier, my parents were in Fiji at this time, and so with Christmas coming up, my dad's sister, my auntie Anna, was so gracious enough to think of us and invite us to come together to spend Christmas with them and eat together. And she just made sure that we had something going on that day because she knew that we were here without our parents. So she included us in their celebration that day. And we're just so thankful for her because this day turned out to be a lot more than we thought waking
Yes.
up that morning. So I remember we went to church, and after church, we all went together to go eat.
Yes.
And we took pictures. We had a good time.
Uh-huh.
And Kim, I remember that day specifically because you ate so much.
I did.
Was it crawfish?
Yes. I'm surprised you remember.
It was like plates and plates and plates of.
That day was my biggest appetite in that
Yeah.
during that pregnancy, and I really did eat so overwhelmingly so much that day, especially crawfish. I think I ate, I'd say like 5 plates of crawfish. It was just so good.
Yes, I know you meant. Yeah, that was just a detail that I remember was you eating all this crawfish because, girl, you could clear a whole table. But speaking of the twins, I wonder, do you remember the dream that you told me when you before Christmas Day? I remember coming over. You guys were at like Mussie's apartment or something at this time. I was working 2 jobs, came for my second job, and came to stop by and see you. And I remember you telling me that you had a dream, and I was like, "Don't worry, that's just a dream. That's not real." Do you remember this dream
Ye-
before I share what the dream is
um,
about?
you know what? I can't really remember, but I have a feeling I might know what it's about just because at this time I was having dreams. So if you could just please refresh in my mind about what that dream was.
Yes. So I only know bits and pieces, but I remember you saying that you had a dream that you had the babies already.
Oh.
And you said, but when you looked, it was snow. And so you
Oh.
were just crying. You're like, I don't know. Like, but I don't, I just remember you telling me this dream. And I was like, you're not going to lose Snow. You're not going to lose the twins. And then, and then Christmas Day comes. So you don't remember any of that dream at all?
It does kind of sound familiar to me, but a reason that I may not remember it is just because at this time I was going through a lot. I had just gotten married a couple months earlier. I was 18 years old. I was pregnant with twins and just learning how to live with someone else when I've learned how to live on my own or with my siblings. But it was a challenging time during that time before Christmas even came up.
Yeah, you were going through a lot of changes that year. That year was a year of change for you, and you were already having to go through so much, and there was still more to come. So, walk us through Christmas morning for you.
Yes, so Christmas morning, we went to church. We went to eat after at a restaurant for Christmas. And as my sisters have said, I ate a lot that day. And I remember it started at the restaurant where I started getting a little cramping, but not too much. But I thought it was from eating too much because I ate so much. After this, we went home and I remember heading upstairs, and me and my husband are laying there on the bed. And all of a sudden the cramping starts coming back and I didn't know that I was going into labor. This was my first pregnancy, my first time experiencing pregnancy and the symptoms and if I'm having labor pains, and I thought I was just cramping from too much eating or maybe not enough water. And I remember getting up and pacing back and forth in my room telling my husband like I don't know, like the cramping wouldn't go away. And my husband was telling me did if I wanted to go to the hospital, but I thought that it wasn't painful to me. The cramping, it was just like cramping, but it was uncomfortable. And I remember heading to the restroom because I felt like I needed to pee, and I sat down on the toilet, and when I pushed, I felt just a big push from it
Pressure.
yeah, just big pressure pushing down. And I knew. I remember looking and seeing the sack. The sack was showing, and I just opened the door and told my husband, I said, Jackie, I think I see the baby. I think I see the baby. And I just remember I got up off the toilet. I stripped off all my clothes and I got into my shower. And I remember when I was in the shower, I turned on the water and I sat down on the floor. It was just a stand in shower, it wasn't a tub. I sat down on the floor with the water running and I pushed my son out. I pushed my first son out. And I just couldn't believe what was going on. There was so much thoughts in my mind. There were so many things going on. And in my head, I just kept thinking,
This is not happening. This is not happening to me. I called out to my husband and I told him, come, come, Jackie. I just gave birth to our son. Our son is here. And he ran in. He opened up the door and saw me sitting there on the floor with our first son born. When I gave birth to him, he was born in his sack. So the sack didn't pop yet. He was still in his sack, thinking that he's in my womb when he was out in the world already. My husband was just at a loss for words and didn't know what to do. And I just told him, go get Mele. Go get Mele. Mele is my sister in law. And one thing with me and my sister in law is that she has also experienced an infant loss. And that was someone I knew. If anyone knows how I may be feeling, it was my sister in law. So my husband went and got her. So when my sister in law came, remember how I shared the backstory of Christmas Eve and me seeing this robe in this box and telling my husband, this is what I want for Christmas. That morning on Christmas, I woke up to my sister in law gifted me a big bag. And she said, Merry Christmas. Here you go, sissy. This is for you. And I remember opening it, so excited. And there was a $50 gift card to Cheesecake Factory. And the other thing that was in there was that exact robe that was in the box. So I remember telling my husband that morning on Christmas, I was so excited. And I told him, look, look, I got it. I got it. This was this was all I wanted for Christmas. And my sister-in-law got it for me. So fast forward to the part where I'm in the shower and my sister-in-law comes and my sister-in-law came and my Christmas bag just happened to be in my bathroom and had it the robe was still in the package. And when my sister-in-law came, she grabbed the robe and she said, "Here, put this on so I can cover myself because I couldn't put jeans on. I couldn't put clothes on. I had already given birth to one of my sons and he was in a sack. The sack didn't pop yet. So the only thing I could do was hold my son with one hand and try to put my robe on and start heading downstairs as we waited for the ambulance."
Man, it's crazy to hear the whole, just imagining you having to go through that at that time. And while you're telling your story, I'm also thinking of, the births that I've had, and I'm trying to imagine, wow, having that feeling, walking around, going to the bathroom, and then having to deliver your son, and having to think. I mean, I don't even want to. I don't even know what was even going through your mind, like, other than this can't be happening to me. Um, oh gosh, I just remember getting a call getting a call from you. I don't remember if it was you. My memory is a little fuzzy.
I think it was me, and I just gave a quick call and said I'm heading to the hospital, and I you guys were excited, but you guys didn't know what was going on.
That's right. That is right. Now that you say that, I do remember before you before you said that you were going to the hospital, you did tell us that you were cramping, and I remember thinking maybe it's contractions, but at the same time I was like it's a little too early. But when you told us you were going to the hospital, I remember my first reaction was excitement. And I just remember looking at Anna, and Anna was just looking at me like, "Oh no, no!" But I was still like, "No, everything's fine." Like just like happy go lucky, not knowing what's actually going on. And so I do remember coming to the hospital and seeing you there in the room. Um, I believe one of the twins was still breathing, and I remember Anna holding that little Twinkie. We didn't know their names yet, but holding that little Twinkie in her hands and just crying with you, but at the same time, us trying to be strong for you because mom and dad weren't here. Um, we didn't have that support. I mean, we had a lot of support, but I mean, we didn't have the familiar support that we've had throughout our lives be there with us in that room. And so it was a strange, to me, it was a strange thing to go through.
Take us back to the moment when you just found out that you gave birth to your son, to one of them, and he was still inside the sack, and the other son was still in your womb. You had to put on your robe, a, a robe that you saw just earlier that gave you joy, and now you had to put this robe on and go with your son into the ambulance, into the hospital. And I believe they came to you to let you know that you had to push your other son out.
Yes. So before I get to that part, whenever the ambulance came to us, and I was sitting downstairs and still holding my son in his sack, and the robe is barely covering my body. And the EMT, they all came inside the home and they're asking, okay, what's going on? What's going on? And I told them, I said, um, I just gave birth to my son and I have another one on the way. And I remember they all froze. They all froze, and I could tell they were shocked and didn't know what to do for a second there. And then they started moving and getting me on the stretcher. And as soon as they put me on the stretcher, that's when my son's sack did break, the first one. Um, when it broke, I remember them wheeling me out the home, and my neighbors are out, and everyone's looking because there's an ambulance slide, and it's Christmas. Christmas is the best feeling, and this was happening to me. And I just remember getting into the ambulance, and there was no space for my husband to come in there with me. So they told him to follow the ambulance. So I was in there with people I never met in my life. And I'm 18 years old, and I'm going through complications, and I'm going through pain because I still have one more in my tummy. And I remember they were hooking me up with all these wires and these machines and trying to ask me questions. I just remember laying there and thinking, this can't be real. This is not real. This is not happening to me. Why me? And there was a hospital that was closer to us. It was only 5 minutes from our house, but they took us to Baylor, which was about 10 more minutes further, um, because they said the baby would have a chance of survival there. As we're heading there, I remember hearing the EMT say, there's no heartbeat. We have lost a heartbeat. And I remember just crying and crying to God and telling God, Lord, if my son is gonna go, please let at least my second son, the one that's still in my tummy, please let that one live. At least we can have that one because we're going to the hospital. We get to the hospital. I remember them wheeling me into a bright room. The lights, it seemed like every ceiling part in that room was nothing but lights, like a surgical operating room. And it was just so bright, and there were so many doctors just running around me and hooking me up. They took my first son from me, and they went, wrapped him in a blanket. They weighed him, and I remember seeing them take him away and knowing that my son had moved on. I remember while this is all going on, I just remember thinking, where's my husband? Where's my husband? I need my husband. That's the only familiar face I know. Everyone else, I don't know. I don't know this doctor. I don't know this nurse. My husband ended up finally getting there, and he came to the room, and he asked me and said, how was our son? Did he make it? Did he make it? And I just broke down crying because I had already knew since the ambulance on the right there that he did it.
But my husband did not know until he got there, and I had to tell him the news that he didn't make it. We sat there crying with each other, but it wasn't over yet. We still had another one on the way. Finally, after they did all the things they needed to do and hooked me up to all the machines and the IV, they rolled me to the elevator as fast as they can to a room so I could be able to deliver our second son. We get up there to our room, and I just remember the nurses telling me, okay, whenever you are ready, just push. And I gave that final push, and my second son came out. When he came out, they wrapped him up in a blue blanket. It was more like a blue towel, and they handed him to me, and they told me, would you like to hold him till he takes his last breath, or would you like me to take him so I wouldn't have to go through that? Of course, I held my son until he took his last breath. My sisters were rushing to the hospital to come see me, and I just couldn't believe that everything was happening to me. I remember when we got the call, like Sally said earlier, at first, she was so excited because this was the furthest thing from our mind that would happen. You know, we just assumed everything was going to be okay. We just assumed that the twins, even though born prematurely, that somehow, some way, they would be able to make it. So we rushed. We all got into the car. We rushed to the hospital, and I remember we were waiting there in the waiting room, and Mele was giving us updates about what was going on with you, and she texted us and let us know that the first baby didn't make it. And I remember Sally and I immediately being brought to reality, the reality of the situation and what was happening. And as we were sitting in the waiting room of the labor and delivery, um, we saw nurses would come, and one nurse was pushing the incubator where the babies are, and inside were stockings, because anybody that was giving birth that day, they would put the little baby in the stocking, as a gift for the parents. And I remember looking at Sally and saying, I hope we get at least one stocking, because we knew that you still had the other one to give birth to. So even though we knew that your first one passed away, that he was born sleepy, we held hope for the second one. And we were brought into the room and told that your second son, who you gave birth to, that you were just spending those few moments with him before he took his last breath. And we actually got to spend that time with you in there, holding your son as he took his last breath. And I think one of the beautiful things about this moment was because as I held him in my hand, because he fit in the palm of my hand, and I remember him turning his head, looking side to side, and I was talking to him. And I remember you spoke out to your son, and as I was speaking to him, he heard your voice, and he tilted his head. He turned his head to face you and Teaki. And I remember thinking, oh, he knows his mama. And even though he was born prematurely, he already knew that he belonged to you. And he already heard your voice, and he knew exactly who you were. And in that moment, that room had so much love for him, for both of them. And so I'm just so grateful that they got to spend that time with us and allow us to love on them before they departed from this world. Yes. You know, I forgot about that memory until you brought it up. And I remember when I spoke, I remember he did turn his head to me. He did. He did. He knew his mama. And I just remember I did not sleep that night at all. Couldn't sleep for the next couple of days. It was a lot to go through, especially not having our parents there because our parents were overseas. So it was just so much during this time for our family as a whole.
It certainly was. I remember Dad calling it a cyclone or something of that sort because things were just moving so quickly. We just went through. I mean, 2014 alone was just a year of just seasons all bunched up together and changing very quickly. So it was like we didn't even get a chance to take a breath after each event, like whether it was a joyful thing or whatnot. But this is how we ended our year. We ended that year with loss and heartbreak and mourning and just feeling, just that heaviness. Christmas is a joyful time, but there is also, we have um, experienced loss during that season as well.
Right. And for many others, that is the season that they have. I mean, with the holidays coming up, Christmas,
Yes.
Thanksgiving, it is a joyful time spending together with your family. And it is also, for many others, you know, a time where they're celebrating without
Their loved
their loved
ones.
ones, just as we did
Mhm.
that year. And I remember just, because I'm the oldest, and I remember walking into that room trying to prepare myself because I knew that mom and dad were in Fiji and they were far away. And I remember thinking to myself, what can I say? What can I say to you in that moment? What can I tell Kim? What can I tell Tiaki and share with them to bring hope to a situation like this? To let them know that they're not alone in this situation. And sometimes there are no words. There are no words. So while you were going through that, I remember just being in that room and with Sally and my two older girls and just loving on you guys and just knowing that whatever was coming up next, that we would not leave your side. And just as your sister-in-law Mele, I mean, she was such a big help during all of this because she reminded us. I don't know if you know, but in the days afterwards, after those, she kept messaging me, messaging Sally, and telling us, please be there for your sister. And she kept telling us, please come see your sister today. Please don't leave her alone. You have to be there with her.
Mhm. And I think, oh my goodness. And I think the reason why she's able to, minister in that way is because she experienced this loss. So she knows how it feels to deal with the days after, after experiencing that, after laying your children to rest and then having to continue living because this is this is life. Life still moves on whether you're ready or not. And I remember having experienced that through you and just seeing that whether you're ready or not, we have to keep moving forward. And so, what a blessing it was to have Mela remind us to come. And I mean, we weren't gonna not be there for you, but always great to be reminded, like, hey, come and see your sister.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, Sally, that I, when I look back to it, I truly and really appreciate that there was someone that understood exactly how I felt because her herself has gone through her own infant loss. And
I never knew that she texted you guys and told you guys, like, come, your sister needs you today. But whew, looking back on those days, it just seemed like all one day, one long, excruciating, tiring day that was never ending. It seemed at that time like there was no hope at the end of the tunnel. But I thank God that He was able to pull me through that, pull my husband through that, and make it a testimony to where we are today, and to see that He blessed us again with another set of twin boys that are now 5 years old and are crazy. That was definitely a hard time for you to go through, and our family overall. I know for mom and dad hearing this news all the way in Fiji, I know as your sisters, it was hard for us to see you go through that. And that was heartbreaking for us. And I can't even imagine that pain for a parent to see their baby lose her baby. I remember mom saying that she never experienced pain like that before. She has lost people in her life. At this time, she had lost her father, and she thought that that was the greatest pain. And she said, but hearing this was nothing compared to that. And I remember her heart going out to you and just feeling for you from so far away, spending each of her days just crying, crying for her baby, wishing she could be here to comfort you. And dad just knowing that even though they weren't here, praying and knowing that God was with us during that time and walking with you during that time.
Now that we are parents, I could just imagine how it must have felt for our parents if our kids were to lose one their own kid. I remember when I went through this loss, not just one loss but two. I remember telling my husband and saying the same thing. I've never experienced such a pain before. And I told my husband and told him I feel like if I were to lose my parents, it wouldn't hurt. It'd be a different kind of hurt than the kind of hurt that I was going through, losing my own flesh and blood, my own baby that is half me and half the man that I love. It it really was a lot. And I know for our whole family, it was a shock. Like dad said, it was like a cyclone.
I also remember dad sharing a song with us called "It Is Well." It's a song that we've heard many times, but to
A
go
hymn.
through this, it really brought those words to life.
And the hymn, for those of you who don't know the song, the hymn says, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul. And sorrows were like sea billows at that time. Felt like you were drowning in a lot of it. And even though you lost your boys on Christmas Day, the effect of that lasted. That's not something that just goes away. And as your sisters, I think we watched you and the roller coaster of emotions that it was for
Yes.
you, and not just you, but for your husband also. I think that's something that in a loss or anything with pregnancy, a lot of the focus is on the mom, which as it should be, but also it was a lot for your husband as well,
And he lost them as well.
because he also lost them, and he lost you a little bit too during that time, because you were going through a lot, and so he had to be strong for the both of you, which was a lot for him. Um, we saw you guys go through a lot that year and the year to come.
I know with your second set of twins, Anamoala named them. And so with these first set of twins, who named them and can you share their names with everyone?
Yes, thank you, Sally. So, with my first set of twins, my other sister in law asked if she could name them. She is the second oldest, right under Anna, and I didn't have a name for them. I wasn't even prepared to have a name for them at that time when it happened. When everything happened, it just happened so suddenly. So she called and asked if she could name them, and she named the oldest one Emanuela, which means God with us, and the second one she named Eliesa, God is my help, and that's where their names came from.
God was with us during that whole entire time. I mean,
Yes.
he not only helped you through that time, but he also restored
Amen.
everything that you went through.
Yes, he did. My faith grew so much more after this traumatic experience, and God used it to just magnify who God really is, especially with my daughter coming in as a rainbow baby and how that came about, and what the doctor told me about having to get a stitch on my cervix because it was said that my cervix was too weak to carry a baby because of the first loss with the twins, and me deciding to follow what God's word says about having such faith as a mustard seed that I could move mountains and nothing could be impossible for me.
Amen.
And I really held on to that truth and knew that God would see me through with my second pregnancy with my daughter, that is my oldest now here on earth. And God was faithful. And now I have my oldest, and her name is Felfaaki Akakao Faith Finau. And we added faith in there because my faith grew tremendously after having such a loss with two babies and then having my rainbow baby.
God is good all the time, even in times of sadness and loss, sorrow. He is still good, and He reveals Himself to us in many ways. He is our healer. He is sufficient for all our needs. He is our provider. He is our refuge. And this situation, this experience that you went through, God revealed Himself to you as your healer and brought restoration to your situation.
I remember just the days feeling so long and not having my parents there that were always our foundation growing up, and being newly married and just going through everything. It was too hard for a person to bear. There were many days where I didn't want to live. To me, there was there was no reason to live. I remember every day thinking, "Oh, if I could just not wake up, I think that would be the best." Because every day was a suffering for me, going through the loss and thinking that at least I can have one baby here, and not being able to have both of them. It was a heartbreaking time, and I did not know how to handle it. I didn't know how I was going to get through it. There is nothing that I could take that would make me feel like
different than what I was feeling. Nothing could give me the satisfaction or the happiness other than Jesus Himself. And I really thank God that I had to go through that because I had pulled away from God and didn't know how far from God I was until I went through everything and I knew nothing else in this world could give me the joy, the peace that surpasses all understanding other than God Himself. And it just came to the point where I knew, God, I can't do this anymore on my own. I can't go on each day wanting to not wake up the next day. I can't go on just miserable. I was so miserable. And I just cried out to God because there was nothing else I could do. I felt like I tried everything and thought of everything and nothing else nothing else was working. So I knew, okay, my last option, let me at least call out to God. Let me see. Let me call out to God and see if He hears my cries. And God was with me. God was Emmanuel. And God is my help. He is Eliezer. And I was able to look to God at that time and cry out to Him. And God heard my cries. I started doing my devotion. I got this devotion book, which is a little backstory. With my parents being in Fiji, I did have I had an in-law at that time that came and saw me, and when I looked at her, I saw her as a godly woman, and she was married to my husband's uncle, and her name is Lena. And I remember she came to me. I was in the garage, you know, doing things that were
Not good for you.
just not good for me, trying to get high or something just to take my mind off of what I was really going through, and nothing was working. And I remember she came and walked in, and her and her husband sat down with me, and she talked to me, and she prayed over me. And during such a hard time, she was like a mother figure at that moment to me because she reminded me so much of my mom. And I really needed my mom. I really needed my mom there. So Lena came, she prayed, and she gave me a devotional book called Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. And boy, did I not know what that book was going to do to me. I took that book and it sat in my room. I don't know for how long, because she had just came and seen me right when everything happened. Until finally, when I knew I had to call out to God. I had to call out to Jesus. Jesus, please hear your daughter's cry. I opened up that book and I saw that she wrote in there and she said, "We love you, but God loves you best." And what a loving God we serve. He's so good. Even through our darkest times, God is so good. His love never wavers. But that book really helped grow my faith. Woke up every morning, started to do my devotions, started talking to God more, started spending time more in His Word, and prayed over my marriage, prayed over, Lord, bless me with a girl. I prayed specifically for a girl because I knew me and my husband, we needed a girl, okay? Not a son yet, but a girl, a daughter. And God did hear me, and He did bless us with our girl. And brought me through such a tough season and my husband through such a tough season. And it just shows how good our God is and how he is always there for us when we call out to him. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful testimony with us, Kim. I know that we went through it together, but just to hear it all over again and to hear your experience personally, everything that you were going through, I just thank God for having his hand in your life and just seeing how far you've come from that time and learn from that time, because not only did you go through it but you learned from it.
Yes, I learned a lot.
Yes, you did. And I'm just so thankful for those twin boys that I'll get to see them in heaven one day, and also for your boys here that we talked about on our last podcast that are running all of us right now, running all our lives. But just thankful for all your beautiful blessings. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us again and letting my little sister Kim share her story with us as we're going into the Christmas season and celebrating her twins that are in heaven. I know every year you guys go on Christmas Day, don't you guys? I always see you and your kids there taking pictures.
Yes, they're always so excited.
So your children, they know about their big brothers.
Oh, yes, they talk about them.
And they're always excited to go and visit them, especially on Christmas Day. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, everybody. We'll catch you guys next time on
What Anna Said
podcast. Bye.